Many of my videos apply competitive concepts to casual cards, and I do that for a few reasons. First of all, I've been a casual. I was a casual and a budget player for many years, and I know what advice I needed to hear to actually become a competitive player, so I try to give that same advice in my own videos. But also, I like opening up a dialogue between competitive and casual players so that both sides can kind of see where each side is coming from. I think it's really interesting, but one of the things that I've noticed, and this especially happens on more volatile card discussions, is that casual and competitive players argue a lot. And in today's video, specifically because I see these arguments so much in my own comment section, I want to talk about why casual and competitive players argue and sort of clear up some of the myths that happen on both sides. And I feel I'm in a prime position to talk about this because I've basically been a casual player for the same amount of time that I've been a competitive player, and I remember very fondly what it was like sort of playing the game for fun and not investing a lot of money into it. So without further ado, let's get some quick myths out of the way. So competitive players do not hate casual players for not having money. I hear this all the time from casual players saying, oh, they look down on me because I'm not investing in this game. And that's simply not true. And while this video has to be taken from generalizations, I'm sure there's some casual players that act differently than what I'm going to talk about, and there's obviously going to be some competitive players that act differently from what I talk about. Overall, competitive players understand that everyone has a variety of hobbies that they invest in, and not everyone is going to invest the same in each one of those hobbies. I play Hearthstone, for example. I think I've spent $100 on the game over the course of 3 years. I do not consider myself a competitive Hearthstone player, and many competitive Yu-Gi-Oh players look at casual Yu-Gi-Oh players in the same way that I just described with Hearthstone. They understand that not everyone takes this game as seriously, and they don't really care. If you're not facing them in a tournament, they really don't mind what you're doing way at the lower tables. It doesn't really affect them. Sort of going along with that, competitive players aren't going to look down on you if you're just trying to have fun. While they're in it to win it, or maybe innovate a deck and be successful with that deck, they don't really care if you're at your lower tables or the mid tables just having a grand old time. And some of those low table experiences are some of the most fun duels you'll ever have in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because of all the random mishmash strategies that you'll come across. But in general, competitive players really don't care that you're just trying to have fun. They completely understand it. And also, they don't hate you for not playing the best decks. I actually see the inverse as being true way more often. I think casual players repeatedly hate on competitive players for playing the best decks, but I very rarely see a competitive player sort of hating on a casual player for playing a deck that's more underrepresented. I think this is because, I know this is because if a competitive player faces you in a tournament and you're playing a deck that's like suboptimal, they're just going to beat you and then move on with their life. They're not going to be thinking about it too hard, and that's perfectly fine. That's just how tournaments go, but they're not going to be talking about you all day like, man, I beat this guy with a low rarity Lightsworn deck, because they simply have other things on their mind. Even if they Swift 2-0 you, or even if you manage to get a game on them, they're likely not considering your deck part of their real tournament experience, and they're most likely just considering it a quote-unquote free win. And that's perfectly fine because they care about the game more than you do, so you shouldn't really care. I mean, if you're playing for fun, you shouldn't care that they've beaten you and moved on. Now, moving on, I do want to say that I have noticed some things from a casual perspective and how they look at the competitive landscape, and I know it might seem like I'm going to come down hard on the casual players, but I'm being completely honest when I say that just looking at my own comment section, it's the casual players that are being way harsher to other players. It's not the competitive players. The competitive players are just trying to build the best strategy and make some friends that are competitive and win the most games. But casual players seem to really have a lot of chips on their shoulder in relation to competitive players. And here's some of them that I noticed come up a lot, and I'm going to sort of debunk all of these. So first of all, I noticed that casual players really refuse to accept that competitive players are also playing for fun. It's just that they have fun winning. This sort of brings up the what is fun debate. Is fun for you building a huge deck that has a crazy combo in it and then getting that combo off even if you lose the match or even if you lose the game? Are you excited that you still did the combo? That might be fun for you, but fun for another player might be going 6-0 at a tournament with a deck that they've spent days and weeks working on. And I think that it's really weird that I notice that casual players regularly say, well, competitive players don't like playing this game. They don't have fun playing it. And I think that's just because a lot of casual players can't accept that some people's idea of fun isn't their idea. I think everyone has their own version of fun, and for most competitive players, they have a great time when they can actually make a whole bunch of successful victories happen because of the hard work and dedication that they've put into building their deck from the ground up. And that's another situation that I want to debunk. Not all competitive players net deck decks, and in many cases, when casual players call a deck a net deck, they're really not meaning what they think they are, because net decks, really what they are is taking a deck card for card, or like 90% of the cards, and then just playing those cards at a tournament without any thought. But what a lot of meta players do, and what a lot of really, really good players do, is they take whatever deck won the last event, and then they build a better version of that deck, maybe with 10 to 20 different choices in there, and then that's how they beat the players that actually did net deck at the next tournament. And I think that's something a lot of players miss, because people, I mean, take a look at spirals, for example. If I've seen this post so many times on spiral deck profiles, even though the spiral strategy has sort of always been innovating every single weekend, as we first had like the really big going first spirals, and now we have the really big going second spirals. And even though the deck as a strategy is progressing, a lot of casual players just say, well, we've been seeing spirals since October, it's always the same deck, which is ironic because casual players are the ones that really claim that they know what's unique. So I don't know why they don't notice that these different deck lists are in fact very unique from each other. And I never quite got that. It seems like if a player uses an archetype that's too good, none of the other cards in the deck matter. And I just don't quite understand that, because the decks have to be innovated every single week pretty much, unless if you want to remain on top of everyone else in terms of tournament results. Because if you're always playing the same deck with no changes, people are just going to sort of advance ahead of you in terms of like how they're building their own deck. Also, I noticed that casual players will literally justify any card, usually with the common excuse, well, you're just not playing it right, and you're just not building it right. And they'll use these excuses for some of the most ridiculous cards in the entire game. I recently made that, well, yesterday I made that top 10 do nothing cards list, and I picked cards that I felt, for the most part, were not very controversial. Most of those cards have never seen any competitive or rogue play to any form of success in the past 10 years, and yet people in that comment section have defended every single card on that list. And that is not an exaggeration. Every single card on that top 10 list is defended in the comment section, and that is crazy to me, because I know that you want to feel like you have the secret sauce that no one else has figured out. But when we have so many different tournament results, I mean, we have thousands of tournament results over like the course of 10 years of people trying out different meta strategies and different rogue strategies with these cards in them. And the fact that very few of these have ever seen any play at the top tables of a tournament, even in a rogue deck, would usually show most logical people that the card isn't that good. And that's perfectly fine. Not every card has to be good. I say that all the time. I play plenty of bad decks. I play Crystal Beasts. I play Volcanics. I play all these decks that are sort of underrated and aren't very good. And I play them to the best of my ability, but I realize when I'm playing them that they're not going to be the top strategy. No matter how much support they get, they're simply not ever going to be the best deck, and I accept that. What really boggles my mind with casual players a lot of times, and what boggles a lot of competitive players' minds, is that casual players can't seem to accept that they're casual players and that the cards they're playing and the strategies they're using don't apply to a competitive sense. I mean, there was a comment on that last video saying, I don't see why Solemn Wishes is so bad. It combos with Card Trader, so you can gain 1,000 life points per turn. And there was sort of a discussion. I didn't actually reply in that thread, but a couple people replied and pointed out that a 2-card combo with unsearchable cards is that only gains life points isn't really worth it. And the guy just said, well, it works in my metagame. And I don't understand that, because I understand that the casual quote-unquote metagame is usually just whatever cards people have available, but you can't possibly apply the same logic to analyzing cards like I do in my videos to casual and competitive tournaments at the same time. The logic that I use is this card good? Will it help me win games? And a lot of the times the answer is no. But for casual players, I've noticed that they just want the card to win a game, and then therefore that card or that combo or that deck is now justified just because it randomly scored a win out of like 100 different trials. And that's something I only notice out of casual players, and I think I know why. I mean, I just kind of explained it, but it's still sort of is kind of weird. Every card has been tried to some capacity. There are thousands upon thousands of people playing this game every single day, and if you think that you really have the secret sauce that no one played, a card everyone overlooked, but also you've never been to a regional qualifier, but you're sure if you went to a regional qualifier you would top easily because your secret card, people have probably heard of it in most cases, and it just isn't as good as you think it is, but that's okay. Just accept that it's not that good. Not every card, not every deck has to be the best deck or the best card. I also see the same complaint. I talked about this in another video, so I'll just briefly mention it. Casual players almost always default, if they don't go to the you just need to build the deck right, they will always say you're just salty because you lost to these cards. That is like one of the comments on that top 10 list was top 10 cards Dzeeff is salty because he lost to. Yeah, I really lost a lot of games to Swords of Revealing Light in 2018, or even just in my life in general. It's like, that's such a weird way to sort of completely ignore any logic and just say you're salty because you lost to it. I think that actually bothers me more than the you just have to build it right sort of answer, because this just sort of ignores everything. It's not, at least the you have to build this right implies that there is a way to sort of build different decks and play with different decks and strategies, but just saying you're salty because you lost to it is a completely asinine thing to say, and if you say that in comment sections, you are just probably the worst of the worst in terms of what competitive players dislike about casual players. Just sort of that blind ignorance about obviously bad cards. And lastly, and I think this is probably what everyone knows about casual players of any game, casual players usually tend to rely on anecdotal evidence with almost every single argument they made. Magic Cylinder is good because they won a game with it. Dark Bribe is good because they negated a Regeki with it and won the game after that. Anecdotal evidence can be useful. I mean, if you look at a card and you play it a couple games and it's always good in those games, you can say, well, this card must be good. But when you look at anecdotal evidence over the course of thousands of games and you just cherry pick individual instances where a card was useful and ignore all the other ones, it doesn't help you become a better player. And that's fine if you don't want to become a better player, but don't try to use your anecdotal evidence to sort of justify playing bad cards, when on this channel I'm looking at cards from a competitive angle. I understand that every single card in the game has the potential to win a game or two, even like the very bad stuff. Zero attack monsters can potentially be equipped with Axe of Despair to attack for the last 1,000 damage. That doesn't make them good, and while that's an oversimplification of a strategy, that's pretty much the same argument that I see on a lot of videos, especially the structure deck videos. People saying like, oh, Ancient Gear is a really good card because you can summon an Ancient Gear and then special an Ancient Gear and make your rank 2. Therefore, that card's not as bad as you say it is. And it's like, yeah, we can all come up with crazy fringe combos that aren't very good and minus you really hard in card economy, but does that make a card good? And the answer, for the most part, is no. But anyway, that is sort of my why casual and competitive players argue so much. I'm sure this video will actually spur a ton of arguments between casual and competitive players. I'm not really meaning to super call anyone out because I've been both, but one of the things that happens when you become a competitive player is you realize a lot of the arguments that you used to use just don't make sense, and I think that's kind of what I wanted to show. The first half of this video was talking about things that maybe casual players think competitive players think is dumb about casual players. Sorry, I'm going back and forth. The first half of the video was sort of what casual players think competitive players are saying about them, but the second half of the video is what competitive players actually are noticing about the casual players. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure you will, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.